Welcome back, everybody, to Modern Randy. I am Randy, and today we're talking about the standard breakdown meta here for the past weekend, going over what decks are doing well, what's doing poorly, and all the things in between. If you like what you're seeing, you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel down below so you can keep up with everything that I'm posting as well. I know also this week we have some really important news with the main announcement, so I'll be doing a video on that as well here. You guys are going to see all my thoughts on that as well. But going over the standard meta breakdown here, starting off with the Friday challenge here, we had 8 Dimir mid-range decks, 5 Boros aggro decks, 6 Gruul Prowess, 3 Golgari, 2 Flood Caller, 2 Domain, 2 Band Tempo, 2 Jeskai Convoke, and then a couple different one-ups. So no surprise here, Dimir mid-range still seems to be, riding on top, taking over most of the, top 32 that we're seeing. This isn't any kind of surprise. This is what we've been seeing now for the last little bit. Dimir mid-range is still doing well, still powerful, no surprise there. Boros aggro kind of came out of the gates this weekend. It was a deck that was, saw fringe play. It wasn't anything major, but it seems to put up a lot of numbers over this whole weekend. So kind of interesting to see, the movement from going from Mono Red, Gruul, Boros, all these type of basically similar red aggro decks with just, splashing a color for your different variants and whatnot. Notably, we're seeing the tempo decks, so like the Simic, Bant, Sultai tempo decks. Those are the ones with the Eddie Murky Crab, things like that are keep popping up. They keep putting up numbers. They keep doing things. Same thing with the Rug Flood Collar deck. We're seeing that kind of keep popping up, keep putting up numbers. And Golgari midrange seems to keep falling further and further down. The midrange has really placed itself, as the foremost midrange deck you want to be playing in these challenges in your standard RCQs and things like that. That being said, Dimir midrange did win the challenge as well, so no surprise here. The biggest difference, I would say, with these decks, or what we've seen kind of moving forward with this, is the Fey Bloom Trick has been a new card that seems to be gaining a lot of traction, being able to make 2/1/1 flyers, as well as tap an opponent's creature they control is kind of huge. Being able to tap down the red aggressive creatures and also temple them by having 2 flyers. So, being able to play this out, with your Enduring Curiosities, being able to, net card advantage that way. Worst case scenario, you're bouncing away the tokens to get your Kaido out, things like that. Not too surprising. We're kind of seeing them lean into this like little fairy package to go along with the Spell Stutter counterspell that's been running around. So kind of leaning more into this. It seems that the Fey Bloom Trick is here to stay. For better or for worse, it seems to be their new way to tempo out opponents. It definitely is very powerful. I've had to play against it a couple times myself in the last RCQ I was in. So definitely a good card overall, but it seems like their newest trick, or their newest thing that Dimir is leaning into essentially in the main deck. And then obviously, we're still seeing some different things going on with the main deck. This one is playing 2 Sheoldred's Edict. That's kind of a new thing. They haven't been playing that for really since the beginning of standard season. But outside of that, nothing too special about this deck, nothing too crazy. Only 1 Sheoldred Apocalypse in sideboard, along with 2 of the Bat Gods as well. That's a little different, but nothing too crazy to talk about, nothing too exciting. But I do expect to see these Fey Bloom tricks to be continuing to pop up in the Dimir decks, and be prepared for them when you're playing against them. That being said, going into the Saturday's challenge, or the first Saturday challenge, we once again, Dimir midrange putting up 6 copies. Golgari firing back with, Dimir midrange putting up 7 copies, with Golgari firing back with 6. Gruul Prowess still putting up 4. Jeskai Convoke putting up 4. Boros aggro putting up 4. Again, Boros aggro kind of showcasing out this weekend. Domain with 2, and then a couple of one-ofs. But, Dimir midrange once again showcasing that it is still on top of the midrange battle that we're having here in Standard. Jeskai Convoke, not surprising, putting up numbers. I did say this in my last video last week, where if you're looking to take down an RCQ, Jeskai Convoke is probably one of your best things to do. It has a good game plan against Dimir midrange. It does struggle a little bit against Golgari midrange. So if you're expecting a lot of Golgari midrange, don't be registering Jeskai Convoke. But if you're expecting Dimir midrange, you're expecting aggro decks, like you can go wider than the Dimir midrange deck can keep up with. You can go bigger than the Boros aggro, or like the aggro decks can do. Plus you're playing, Shelter of Light, so I'm not too surprising to see that deck pop up in, with 4 numbers here at all. So nothing too surprising about this challenge. Although the red-white deck did take and win. So this is the red-white deck that kind of like popped off this weekend, if you will, or this past weekend. So doing nothing too crazy, right? We're still running, the mouse package essentially. We're running Heartfire Hero with Emberheart Challenger, Manifold Mouse. We're running the Hired Claw, and then only 2 Screaming Nemesis, and also we're running, the Melbourne Hair to the Crag Flame, that 3-drop mouse that gives you a enchantment token or artifact token that you can equip to get it like +1/+1, and I think it's trample and something else. I don't remember off the top of my head. But also burst lightning, monstrous rays, the shelter by ghosts, the Charmage's rescue, lightning helix, and Boros charm is kind of a reason for being white here, essentially. So we're getting life gain, we're getting protection, we're getting increased damage, and we're getting a way to swing back at our opponents. Their aggressive decks with lightning helix being able to deal 3 damage and gain 3 life. And have like that life gain swing. The Shard Mage Rescue is a good protection spell. Shelter by Ghosts is an amazing tempo card. If you're ever playing against like a red mirror match essentially, and you go turn 1 drop, they go turn 1 drop, you go turn 2 Shelter by Ghosts, the game is just over. You've swung so much back, and especially if you had like you put that Shelter by Ghosts on a Heartfire Hero, like you've just done so much. It's unreal. So it's not too surprising to kind of see this kind of pop up with all the aggressive decks running around. Not to mention, Shelter by Ghost is still a good card against, the rest of the field as well. It's not just a terrible card by any means. So not too surprising to see this kind of like take off and take play. I always thought that Boros was a correct build, honestly, moving forward. With these decks, it's surprising me that it was taking this long to get here. But I definitely think this is where you want to be. You're super low to the ground, you're super aggressive. You have the protection spells, you have the extra burn with Boros Charm. All of it just, makes sense to me of why this would be the best deck. Plus, you get to play those special sideboard cards, Rest in Peace, Destroy Evils, Exercise, always fun, along with, this one's playing the 3rd copy of Shelter by Ghost. I can see you almost going up to 4 copies with that, especially with the other aggressive decks running around. But that's just me personally. But not too surprising to see this deck do well. I'm really happy to see Boros finally breaking out and doing something in these tournaments. Moving on to the second challenge here on Saturday. Dimir Midrange comes out of the gate here with 10 copies. In the top 32, Golgari with 3, Gruul Prowess with 4, Boros Aggro, once again, 3 copies, Domain with 3, Azorius Convoke with 2, and then a bunch of different one-ofs there. So, again, not too surprising, Dimir Midrange putting up 10 copies. This is kind of what we've seen so far, where Dimir is just, by and large, the most played deck. Whether or not it is the best deck in the format is another question, but it is definitely the most played deck. I think it just has so many different tools and answers for like what Magic players like to do. You get to draw cards, you get to play tempo, you get to play control. It gives you all the things you want to do as a Magic player, and I think that's why we're seeing Dimir see so much play essentially. But then Gruul and Boros Prowess, putting out 4 and 3 copies, so essentially 7 aggro decks as well in there. So not too surprising. Like I said, it's Dimir and its aggressive decks are the two most popular decks you're going to run into. Just depends on what flavor of aggro your opponent wants to be playing. That being said, Dimir did unfortunately take the tournament as well. Again, not too surprising. We did see, again, there's different numbers here as well. I talked about, Faebloom being played. There's no copies of this in the 75 at all. They're running 2 deep counterbacks in the main instead. They're only on 3 Kaido. They're on the Nowhere to Run. That card's been popping up a lot more in these Dimir lists as well. Being able to ignore Ward is really good for them, especially with, we've seen the Simic and the Bant and the Sultai tempo decks running around. So being able to ignore Tolarian Terrors, Ward 2 is a huge deal for these decks, making their removal spells not cost, 4 mana, only costing 2 is a huge deal. This one's also running Preacher in the main, so like I said, I don't think there's, there's not a 60 configuration that I think people like for Dimir mid-range besides, basically all these decks at this point are playing like 4 Spygrass Siren, 4 Fairy Mastermind, 4 Floodplain Drowners, 3 to 4 Enduring Curiosity, and 3 to 4 Kaido. And then you gotta figure out the rest from there. There's really not this like set. So even this deck is running only 2. Oh no, it's running 3. Sanctuary. I thought it was only running the 2. But yeah, like, it's just, we keep seeing different numbers, different things change. Sideboard's completely different than what we saw in the last one. So when you're expecting this deck, just expect them to always have turn 3 Kaido. You need to be aware of how to stop that, and then you need to, try to play around their removal or play through their removal as best as you can. Like this one's running 4 Go to their throat and only 1 Anoint. Wasting the other one's doing like a 2-2 split. Things like that. This one's running Phantom Menace. The other one wasn't running Phantom Menace. It was running the Spellstutter Sprite. or spell stutter. Sorry, not sprite. This is spell stutter, counter spell. So like I said, there's just a bunch of different things going on with this deck. There's no real set 60 or even set 75 that people are for sure like this is what I want to register type deal. We just know they want to play blue and black cards that are low to the ground with good removal spells. So going on into the Sunday's challenge, we had Gruul Prowess putting up 5 copies along with Zorius Kuvok with 3, Domain with 4, Dimir midrange with 3, Golgari midrange with 3, Boros aggro with 3, we got Tempo with 2, Sultai Tempo with 2, and a bunch of different one-ofs. So, notably, there is no Domir. It is, or sorry, there's not no Domir. There's 3 copies of Domir. This is the first time in a long time that Domir was not the most played deck. It's not even the second most played deck is like the third most played deck, well tied for third, honestly, with a bunch of the other decks. But it is kind of weird to see Domir being underplayed in this challenge. I don't know what happened, why people were underplaying this one. I'm not sure why Gruul Prowess, spiked on this one for sure, but it is interesting to say the least that, Domir for some reason wasn't the most played deck, which is kind of weird because this is the first time this has happened in a long time where Domir was not, the most played by any means. That being said, the Rug Floodcaller deck did win. Nothing too stand-outish here, if you will. Nothing too remotely crazy when you look at this list. Biggest thing is they've moved on to like this Invasion of Ixalan is a new tech they've been running. New tech they've been running. This one was running a Burst Lightning in the main along with the four Torch of Towers, so a little bit more spot removal. Outside of that, though, nothing too crazy. Only one up the Beanstalk. That's a little different. I was playing. It had 2 more songs in the sideboard. That's a little different. Kind of gonna go more like aggressive, almost, if you will. It had Pyroclasms there for like gold Y strategies. This turtle is a 1 mana 0/5. It is literally there for the aggressive matchups because this deck struggles hard against aggro. It's literally just there to be a 0/5 blocker. But yeah, there's nothing too insane about this deck. The sideboard's a little kind of all over the place. I think all these decks, though, are a little bit all over the place. Rug Floodcaller's not. I'm not a deck that has figured out it's 75 or it's 60 even. They keep tweaking and trying to figure out, what is the best way to build the deck. I'm definitely one of those people who keeps trying to build a deck to make it, more playable, more fun. So I'm curious to see what ends up coming out with this deck. It's a super fun deck to play if you guys ever want to play it. It has a whole bunch of lines and different challenging aspects to it, but it's really fun. You guys should give it a chance if you have free FNM, or if you want to just run it through a league or play it on Arena if you have the wild cards and stuff for it. Super fun deck to play though. Super interesting, super dramatic, and a lot of choices. You have infinite choices, it feels like, with this deck. Well, you either have infinite choices or you have no choices. Those are your 2 options with the deck, because there's sometimes when you draw somehow, you're playing like 18 to 20 lands and you somehow will draw 12 lands straight. It's really fun when that happens because you have no choices and you're just dying to like a 3/4 on your opponent's side. But outside of that, the deck usually has a lot of choices, interactions, and things to do. It's really fun. We also had the Arena Championship here, and then this is all the decks that were registered essentially for the Arena Championship. So Dimir was the most registered deck by and large with 18 copies. Excuse me, not surprising there at all. Gruul Prowess was the next one with 12 copies, and then we had the Sultai Tempo deck having 4, Jeskai Kavok having 3, Golgari Midrange having 3, Mono Red with 2, Pure with 1, and then a bunch of one-ofs. Nothing too surprising there. As a whole, that the Dimir Midrange would be, the most played deck by any stretch of the imagination. That is, like we said, we talked about this being like, the best deck, or the deck that gives you the most options throughout the whole game, where you get all these choices and all these micro decisions that matter and build up, and you have to outsmart your opponent or outplay your opponent with a tempo version, essentially. So, it's one of those decks that makes Magic players feel smart. It's the reason why a lot of people gravitate towards it. It's also a good deck. I'm not saying it's a bad deck by any stretch of the imagination in any way, shape, or form, but it's one of those decks that I think people just really enjoy playing. I think this is the same reason why we saw Blue-Red Murktide be so popular after MH2, when you had Ragavan stuff, where you got to, you had to know your metagame, you had to know what you're playing against, you had to know how to play the deck, essentially, to do well against the other decks. So, it made you feel smarter when you were winning, essentially. Not that, you can't be dumb and play Dimir Midrange. I've played Dimir Midrange and still won, so you can be dumb and play it too. You don't have to be smart. But it is just, one of the most popular decks for that reason, I think, where you get all these like kind of micro decisions that matter and can make you feel smarter when you figure out how to play through like this complex board state. That being said, though, Gruul Prowess was the one that ended up winning the arena championship. So turns out turning guys sideways is still a good plan. In case you guys were unfamiliar with that idea. This deck is a little bit different though. We're playing only 2 Monastery Swiftspears and 2 Screaming Nemesis. Still playing, 4 Claws, 4 Heartfire, 4 Ember Challenger, 4 Mana, 4 Mouse. Always playing, that 12 card mouse package. Along with 3 Questing Druids to keep that, card draw going. Playing Burst Lightning, Monstrous Race, 2 Shocks, 2 Talent, Innkeeper's Talent. Only 1 Snakescale Veil, towards the tower, and then an Obliterating Bolt in the main, as it's kind of like a removal suite here. So a little bit different. Excuse me, a little bit different of a game plan for this deck. I think it kind of bred into the fact that they thought there'd be a lot of Dimir running around, so having a little bit more removal here with the 2 additional Socks and the Towards the Tower, being more proactive instead of reactive with the Snakeskin Veil. I kind of like this idea. The 2 Monastery Swiftspears is a little interesting to me. I'm not sure what their reasoning was for wanting to play that. They just wanted to have 10 1-drops essentially, was like their kind of argument, or what their reasoning was. I'm not 100% sure. All the lands are pretty much the same. We're playing all the dual lands we can play along with 3 of the Rockface Village to help trigger our Valorant, things like that. And then our sideboard kind of makes sense too when you think about it, with the Lithium Magnetic Barrage being able to kill the all the blue creatures from Dimir that can't be countered, 2 Torch the Towers for the additional aggro decks, Paul Patch Formation for those pesky enchantments, Urborash's Forge to help us grind through, along with the 4th Questing Druid, Scorching Shot to help kill, Shieldred, things like that with 5 toughness, and then Sunspine Lennox is a way so players can't gain life still, and you can deal a bunch of damage if they're playing a bunch of non-basics. So always good to have that in there. So nothing too surprising with this. Like I said, the only thing weird is that they're playing 2 Monastery Swiftspears, and I think that's just because they wanted to play 10 total 1-drops. So always have something, theoretically you're always having something to do on turn 1 to be proactive in that state. That's kind of what they built their deck to be, was very proactive instead of reactive. Like I said, with the more removal spells over Snakeskin Veil. So, but this is kind of everything that happened this weekend. Usually I do a whole breakdown of all the decks that are being played, but there's not really a point in doing that anymore. We've kind of come to this conclusion where, this is a pretty accurate representation of what's being played. Is we're seeing a bunch of mid-range, Dimir mid-range. We're seeing a bunch of Gruul Prowess, Boros Prowess, Mono Red. Take your pick. Those are what you're going to be seeing. And then we see a bunch more of Golgari mid-range easily, but Golgari is starting to fall off in favor of Dimir. Not too much to say about that as a whole. I think that Dimir just has a better way of going underneath decks and just out-tempoing them, as to where Golgari is better at going big and above what they're doing. And I think you just want to be underneath a lot of people, especially with how much aggro is still going on in the format. Just going under, getting ahead quickly is where you want to be. So it kind of makes sense. The biggest thing is the tempo decks keep popping up. These Sultai and Bant tempo decks are popping up. They're doing overall pretty well as a whole. I think they're really well positioned. I took a Bant tempo deck myself to an RCQ. I'm going to do a video on that here later this week if you guys want to check that out. Talk about what I played against, how I did, how I felt with the deck as a whole. I'll do a whole little video breakdown of that. But this is what's going on in Standard as a whole. Let me know what you guys are seeing, what you guys are playing, taking to your RCQs. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll catch you guys next time.